In this section, we will begin looking at the components of blood pressure. The cardiac output is the volume of blood that is ejected from the left ventricle in 1 minute. This is represented by the equation CO equals SV times HR, where CO is the cardiac output, SV is the stroke volume, or the amount of blood that exits the left ventricle in one contraction. HR is heart rate, or the number of times the heart contracts in 1 minute. Blood pressure is represented by the equation BP equals CO times TPR, where BP is the blood pressure and CO the cardiac output. TPR is the total peripheral resistance, or resistance of the blood vessels to having blood flow through them. Therefore, we can combine the equations to be BP equals SB times HR times TPR. We will look at each of these components in more detail. There are three main factors that influence the stroke volume. 1 is Starling's law, 2 the forcefulness of contraction, and 3 the pressure to eject blood. Starling's law looks at the stretch in the heart. The more it stretches, the more it has to contract to get back to its original size. This is Starling's law of the heart, which is different than Starling's law of the capillaries. They are named after a researcher who studied the heart, and he named both laws after himself. The next factor is the forcefulness of the contraction, which is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. This is influenced by levels of calcium, which is needed for muscle contraction, and digitalis, a substance derived from the foxglove plant used in digoxin. Both of these increase contraction force. Anoxia, or lack of oxygen, acidosis, anesthesia, and potassium levels all decrease the contraction force. The third factor is the pressure to eject the blood. Some blood will remain behind in the ventricles after the contraction, just like if you pour out a glass of water, a few droplets remain behind. This is not a problem unless it begins to back up in the heart. When this occurs, it will eventually put pressure on the pulmonary trunk. In congestive heart failure, the blood begins to back up all the way into the lungs, causing fluid to build up in the lungs. This can progress to several liters of fluid rather quickly, but is generally treatable with diuretics if dealt with in time. Heart rate is the next component we will look at. This is controlled by the autonomic nervous system as well. The sympathetic stimulation is inhibited by slowing down the heart rate by anoxia, acidosis, anesthesia, or potassium levels. Sympathetic stimulation is increased by epinephrine and norepinephrine, calcium levels, and digitalis. The sympathetic message reaches the heart using norepinephrine through the cardiac accelerator nerve. The message comes from the Cardiovascular Center, and then that cardiac accelerator nerve will come out of the sympathetic trunk. The Cardiovascular Center in the medulla oblongata takes the information takes the information from sensory receptors in the body and higher brain centers, including the limbic system and cerebrum. It determines whether to increase or decrease the impulse by sending messages through the sympathetics or parasympathetics. While the cardiac accelerator nerve carries the sympathetic message, the vagus nerve, or cranial nerve 10, carries the parasympathetic message. This will decrease SA node activity with the use of acetylcholine. Baroreceptors are sensitive to changes in the blood pressure. These are located along the aorta and carotid artery and provide feedback for determining the heart rate. We also have chemoreceptors that are sensitive to chemical changes in the levels of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and acid levels, or the hydrogen ion. Our hormone levels can influence the heart rate, such as epinephrine and norepinephrine found in the adrenal glands. Thyroid hormones increase the heart rate, as well as exercise, stress, and excitement. When the resting heart rate is too fast, above 90 beats per minute, we refer to that as tachycardia, where too slow is below 60 beats per minute, and is bradycardia. There are some instances where it is normal to have a heart rate below 60 beats per minute. Ion balance can affect the heart rate with the levels of potassium, sodium, and calcium. Age, gender, fitness levels, and body temperature also influence the heart rate.